Hey everyone, my name is Andrew Davis, and you're watching Season 3 of Conversations in Pop Culture, brought to you by my sponsors, Mixer Printing, the smarter way to print. I know printing your creative project can be confusing and stressful, but Mixer is here to make it easy. From their instant go calculator that lets you get as many clicks as you want for free to their 24-hour customer service support. Mixer is here to make sure your printing experience runs smoothly from start to finish. And right now, you can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials. And the company has also printed many successful Kickstarter campaigns, including my guests at one point, and a bunch of them you have heard about. So they offer services.
Yeah, let me talk about that. Actually, so they printed 2 books for me. They printed Cthulhu Invades Wonderland, which is perfect, fantastic. And what I love about them is they have a digital printout that kind of shows you where the issues, and they're very sticklers. Like if you send it to a local printer, they're not going to show you the little damages, the little things that could come up, which I think is fantastic. Like, to be honest, I wish I could just use that part of it. Like there was a pay where I just pay and be like, hey, can you check my files to make sure they're perfect? Because nobody does it better. And then they printed my hardcover for Holiday Spirits, and it was a little late, but it's friggin' paper shortage, so you can't blame them. So yeah, I love them. They've done a great job for me. They're my emergency printer. They've done great by me.
Yeah, and just to go further, obviously they print in the US, Canada, Australia, UK. And if you drop my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab, you get 5% off your order. So that's mixam.com. Again, type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab. Save yourself 5% on your first order. Also, really quickly, I do have a BCW supplies code. Pop Anime Comics saves you 10% off at checkout. So use that, bags, boards, long boxes, any comic supplies. And please go do that. And obviously, Travis just spoke. I don't think Travis needs an introduction, but welcome to the show for the 6th time or 7th time now. I don't even know.
I think it's way less than that. I think.
No. It's not. It's at least 5. Because the last time you joined the 5-time club.
Did I? All right. So who's beating me?
I think it's just you. I think it's you and somebody else has 6 times.
There was a chick, right? Some wrestling chick who was way more attractive than me.
I don't even think it's that either. It's like, I think maybe like Ruben Romero might be tied with you.
All right. Well, anybody wants to step up, I'm willing. Let's go.
I mean, Gary J is still at 5. Okay. So I mean, there's legitimately like 3 people who are in that level of 5 plus more. So this is your 6th time, but obviously I don't want to spend all the time talking about how many times you've been on.
I think it's very interesting conversation. I think that's what people want. Especially we're going to the podcast soon too, and they hear this and be like, "What? This guy 6th time? What is so special?" Like, I think I'm excited. I'm excited.
The truth of the matter is I couldn't find anybody else. No.
No. See, that wounds me because this is my book. I mean, and it's been blowing up, right? You've seen my sales. Like, this is producing at a Cthulhu Invades Oz Holiday Spirits level, Come on.
Let's actually, all jokes aside, though, obviously there's a reason why I have you on, because you came on very early the first time, and then obviously you just produce a lot of content in a lot of ways, and you produce a lot of books. And this is arguably your top single issue book that you've ever pushed out, and it's Granite State Punk. I think you're over 10,000 now, right?
No. We're under 10,000. We're at 8,334, and we're at 292 backers. But in the Orange Cone world, that is the highest producing single issue, both money-wise and backer-wise. Our backer was higher. It was a Voodoo Nations. Number 1 was 278, and we are already at 292. We're on the road to 300. Yes, of course, we have Holiday Spirits, Cthulhu Invades Oz, but those are bigger numbers. Like, those are bigger draws because of what they are, and tons of other creators. This is solo me and my artist and my, lettering and editing team. That's it.
And so let's talk about what Granite State Punk is, because it is a very interesting story. And what is the basic premise? Because I know it goes to your roots in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So Granite State Punk is about a character named Zeke. Zeke is on house arrest. He got arrested for using drugs and alcohol, partying too much, the punk lifestyle. He is forced to be under house arrest at his parents' house, who have passed away. He was left it to him in his will. So he technically owns it. And as he's living there, he finds out that there may be more to why he kept drinking his whole life. like he was trying to drown something out that he didn't want to address, which ties into the Old Man of the Mountain, ties into witches, ties into a bone golem. So there's some cool stuff there. And it's all done in the breaking the fourth wall. So lots of, fourth wall, Deadpool type breaking.
Yeah, and one of the things, I'm going to dive into the story because I find it interesting. Obviously, he's a drinker, and I partake in that activity perhaps a
Right.
little too much. But where did this idea come from? Because I know that you grew up and you have roots in New Hampshire, and obviously a lot of what you've been through. It's raw and gritty in a lot of ways. So, what's the whole story about building this one out and this entire story out? Because it's super
So,
interesting.
yeah. So originally, this was just a basic concept, not a basic concept, but the concept was a guy digs in his backyard and finds a whole bunch of bones, and you find out he has a secret history. I love this Facebook user. The real reason Travis is on here so much is he blackmailed Andrew for more screen time. Obviously, can't be wrong. If you ever seen him on my streams, there's tons of blackmail material.
It was only once. It was only once.
Only once. You ought to get him off here when we talk about cryptocurrency and all the crazy and all the stuff we've talked about in the past. So politicians, all sorts of stuff. That's the stuff I could really blackmail if I was recording. Anyways, so it was a basic story, but then I decided I wanted to put it in New Hampshire. I wanted to use my local area. So I actually have like stores and the fair. I'm from Rochester, New Hampshire. Rochester Fair's in there, and old pizza places in there. Jetpack Comics, which is a comic store out there. Tied it all into that, and as I started writing it, it got more and more intimate with me. Like I decided, oh, this is me. Oh, I'm going through some shit. Oh, I'm writing this shit down. And it ended up, and I said it in a podcast recently, as I've been doing this tour of things, I realized that both my parents are dead, both drug and alcohol related. So there's a lot of connection to that. There's also AA in this, which is connection to my mom who tried to recover. And she did, but that's a whole other story. I realized that this book, I spent a lot of money on the art. I spent everything. I try to make it as perfect as personal. And it's a one shot, by the way. There's a beginning, middle, and end in this one story. It's a love letter to New Hampshire. Like I really wanted to say I love you to my state. And I wanted to ask them, are you proud of me? Because my parents can't answer that question. So I put so much New Hampshire lore in there to kind of like, hey, New Hampshire, you're proud of me. And Andrew, today I just got an interview, a small little piece in the Union Leader, which is a New Hampshire newspaper. So they do love me. They've been paying attention to my Kickstarter and had some questions, which is dope.
So let's even talk about that, because obviously when we write about raw things and we dive into things that are personal and
Right.
we root up, and ask those deep questions and things that go deep and cut the hardest. And also, what is that like? Because a lot of times, that stuff comes out the strongest as writers because it's kind of write what you know. And so, what is this like for you? Because I know that, Voodoo Nations has some personal stuff in there as well, but I think this is your most personal piece. And so, what is this like? Because what I've read and the preview of what I read, I mean, it is deep and you can feel it and it is intense. And it's like, I don't want to say you're pouring out your heart, but it's raw and it's real, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, most people who've read it has said they can feel the anxiety of the character. They can feel the pressure of the story, which really, really leads to a really good story. Um, so you're right. Voodoo Nations has some personal vibes to me. So doesn't Broke Down. So doesn't all my stuff has a personal vibe, but this is me. That's the difference. Like, this is me. Most of them are like, oh, here's a part of me you can have. This is my anxiety. This is my fears. I'm not an alcoholic. That's literally the only thing that's different about that and me, because I have that anxiety. My brain thinks like this character. The way he thinks and the way I think are the same. So yeah, it shows it. Like even in one of the lines I write in the script, so he's talking and he's ranting about a whole bunch of stuff, and he stops and he's like, "Oh, you're bored," and then he goes into something else. That's me when I write a script. When I'm sitting and typing, I'm like, da-da-da. Oh shit, they're fucking bored. I'm bored. All right, hold on, let me change it. And I change it up. And that's when you have those up things. So yeah, it's really intimate to me. I right now, it is flat out the best thing I've ever written. Second, if anyone wants to know, like if I die, this is the book I want them to read. Even though I have things that are completed longer form stuff, like this is me. This is something special to me. This is where I'm from. This is the book that I was made to write.
Yeah, and it's also very interesting because there's a lot of symbolism, and I might have a slightly different interpretation of
Mm,
this, where I feel his anxiety, and then we're sort of finding out why he has that, and there's certain things going on. There's witches in there, and then he's digging in the backyard, and he finds these skeletons, and well, there's a lot of secrets, and it's sort of about what's in your past. And I viewed a lot of it as symbolism, and I'm not too sure what is real, what he's imagining, but
sure.
I get this idea that, with the skeletons, I immediately, went to the thought, oh, you're digging up your skeletons in your closet. And he's sort of, I feel Zeke is going on this journey of saying, why am I drinking? Why am I asking these questions? And it's very interesting because, at a certain point, I don't want to say he's having a midlife crisis, but he's definitely having an explanation or an exploratory crisis. And so,
Right.
what was that like? Because it's really beautiful symbolism in the entire book.
Yeah, it was when I wrote it. So I don't show Heather, my wife, who edits all my stuff. She doesn't ever see anything in script form, which I know that's not the way editing works. I like to surprise her on the page. I like to show her on the page, and which is sad because so many people use her for that, and they write amazing scripts. I just don't. I don't know why. But this story, I was so proud of. I sat with her. I was like, "Can I read it to you?" And I read it to her out loud. Read the story. Read the anxiety. Played it out the way I wanted to play it. It does feel like if anybody likes punk rock and watches SLC Punk, I kind of pulled that vibe. SLC Punk, and what's the you would probably know you probably really dig it. The what is it? The show about it's got the guy who played Freddie Mercury, and he does computer hacking.
Oh man,
Can't think of that name of that show right now.
I can't think of it either. I know what show you're talking about, but
Right. It went a few seasons, and like but like you said, you don't know what's in his head, what's not. I kind of wrote it the same way. Damn, I really want to know the name of that show. I love that show. Watched to the end, was so shocked on everything as it went through. It was great, man.
because it's
Mr.
so
Robot,
yeah,
Mr. Robot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was thinking it was Mr. Robot. I'm like, no,
Yes,
that's
City Mafia. Yes, thank you, Mr. Robot. And I saw that comment before was from you as well. Thank you.
no, it was too easy, Mr. Robot. That's like the easy trivia question for you, and then you get it all wrong.
Right, I would suck at Jeopardy.
But yeah, no, because it's very interesting, and I thoroughly enjoy this because I feel like people don't write about anxiety, and it's such a complicated issue. Mental health as a whole is a very touchy subject, and with this, I don't feel like I'm being lectured to. I don't feel like I'm being ostracized when I'm reading it. And I've read comics, and I think you've read some where they're dealing with mental health, and it's almost like mental health is being used as a crutch and not as the story and things of that nature. And that's what's so interesting about the way this is being written. And it's also
Are you there?
froze. I'm back, right, everybody?
Yeah. You had a question in there, but it never got to it.
So I guess with mental health in comics is a very tricky topic, and I feel like a lot of stories use it as sort of a crutch to move the story forward. And this, I feel like we're with Zeke in the entire thing, and we feel, and it's almost like we're sitting in his head, and it's so beautiful what you've done with this. And then things are getting explored, and I mean, what is this like that there's been such a positive response to it? Because sometimes these things don't go so positive on Kickstarter and in the comic world.
Yeah. I mean, like I've shared in other streams, this is the most I've ever paid for a comic. This is the most intimate to the story. And even the artist, he knew what the story was and he made it so special. Like there's a tattoo on his neck. So there's a skull on one side and a heart on the other side and dots across it. And it's very like punk nature, right? You slit your throat, you're death, only death can save you, right? Or you throw it the other way, only love can save you, but the true love is death. Like live free or die. This crazy motto that New Hampshire has. But when it comes to anxiety, like I suffered from anxiety yesterday. Yesterday, I was so anxious. I started having anxiety when my parents died. I don't know what caused it, but I started having it. And yesterday, there was nothing wrong in my life. My Kickstarter is doing great. I just signed a big contract. My work, it just hits you, and you don't know what's going on. It's so much easier when you have an anxiety and you can place that. Oh, this happened, so I know why I'm suffering. And but most of the time, people who suffer from anxiety, there's nothing going wrong. And I don't take any medication or anything like that. It's something I deal with, and I don't deal with it all the time. It happens like once or twice, you know, a quarter or so, for sometimes hours, sometimes a day, whatever the case would be. But writing that and writing a character who's deep into that really fits the pop culture, right? You're kind of punkish. Not you. You may not even like the scene, but you know a whole bunch about a bunch of things, and you try to explain your point of view of it, even if someone doesn't agree, right? That's the punk mentality, right? I'm going to explain it, and I'm just trying to. And when you're explaining it, I've sat with you where you're figuring it out as you're explaining it, right? You haven't even thought about it, but you're speaking it so fast, you're figuring it out as you go along. That's the punk mentality, and that's what I was trying to get on the page.
Yeah, and then one of the cool things is that this is not a series, and that's what I think is interesting. So I come from the world of governmental writing and short writing, where what I like to do is I like to write an article 600 to 800 words, which is not a lot of words, and
Right.
a one shot is not a lot of pages. It's not a lot of words. And what is that like? Because I don't think you're going to have a sequel to this, right?
Maybe. I mean, we're talking about it, but if I do, it's going to be a series of one shots. They're not going to be a series in the traditional sense. It'll be a series of one shots with the same kind of, anxiety and play.
But to even go further into that, because what is that like to say, hey, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end, and this story is now wrapped up, because
Right.
that is an art in itself, and I don't think you've done a one shot before. And so, what was that like to really make this sort of, I don't want to say tied up neatly, but as far as the story's completion goes, because that is a skill, and I think that skill is massively lost.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love it. It's a throwback to the old Constantines, the old Hellblazers. All those were one and done stories back in the day, and the old Spider-Mans are one and done storylines. It's a classic way of doing comics, and for me, this book could have been stretched out to do a 4 issue because I give you enough information that it could have been a 4 issue arc, but I didn't. I really wanted because of the anxiety and the way I made people feel. It's better if it all kind of throws down and gets bigger, 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 bigger pop. And the pacing of the book. I even took some. This is one of the few scripts that I sent to some people. I didn't send it to my wife because I read it to her, but sent it to other writers. Frank Martin. I think you've had him on the show before, right? Um, Frank Martin's a good one. A couple other people, and they gave me some feedback about the story and tried to make it all fit. And it was what I loved about it when I sent it out to people. A lot of people were like, I don't see how you're going to do this, Travis. Like you're saying a lot and the art's a lot. Like, how are you going to do this? But I knew how I was going to do it. So yeah, it's a lost art, the one shot. But I think it's a beautiful, beautiful art when you can get it and it's done well, because there's nothing I love more than wow, I'm satisfied by this comic. When you grab a comic, you're like, wow, this is good. I'm satisfied. I can put it down. I don't have to wait another month for it, or in Kickstarter world a year, right? So
Yeah,
what?
no, it's a very, very cool thing. And I also think it's the idea that people now also want, saying, hey, look, I'm not now having to go invest in 4 issues, and I don't have to go drop a huge economical commitment. And it's a very different thing. Obviously, one of the things that people don't know is that I have a budget every month for Kickstarter, and that budget is tight. And
Right.
so I'm at the stage where I look at something and says, oh, there's going to be 6 issues. To some degree, it becomes a turnoff because I'm calculating saying that's $120, $150. But if you have a one shot that's $20, I'm like, oh, cool. I get the book and it's a complete story. So I think it's something that is really helpful to people when they're like, oh, it's not a huge financial commitment to getting a complete story. And then, hey, we're done now with this story and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, there's been a couple of people who backed at the low level tier, and then I've seen interviews and realized that it's a one shot and have come back and up their pledge just for, like you said, they're like, Travis, I love your work, but I have a budget. So what I do is I'll buy the $3 tier, and then when you have the trade, I'll go all in for the trade. I'll just wait till you're finished because I know you're a guy who finishes your stories. But when they find it's a one shot, they're like, "Oh man, I'm gonna up it right now! Like I don't want to miss out."
Yeah, and then even going further, because I don't want to ruin this story, because I think that would defeat the purpose of and hurt you in actually getting people to go back it. And I want people to be pleasantly surprised with where it's going, including myself. But one of the cool things is that you have a lot of covers and you have a lot of stuff going on with this. And so obviously you have the digital deluxe, you have the Orange Cone digital sample pack for somebody who knows nothing about you, which if you know nothing about Travis, I'm going to say something very pleasantly. Go pick up either the Orange Cone digital pack or the complete library. You will not be disappointed. I promise you that. There's something for everybody that you have done in that fashion. But you also have a lot of different covers. And I think this is some of the coolest cover art you've done in a while. And this might be slightly out of order as far as the cover A's and B's, but this is sort of, I think, maybe the cover A or
Yeah,
maybe
that's
the
cover
cover
A.
B.
Yeah, that's Patrick cover. I mean, and you could look at that cover for hours and get details and stuff like that. It's crazy.
Hmm. And so, what is this like? Because it's now not just the interior art in this book, and I have some cool photos of that as well, which is this right here.
Yeah.
And, obviously, this is right here, which I just love this entire page. I think that page is awesome in
Yeah.
so many ways. And then, but then you have this cover art, and it's amazing because this is just one of those things where you're just looking into it. It's sort of a punk rock concert, but then you realize that there's a bunch of skeletons in there.
Right.
But you could look at that and miss it completely, and it's just like a really trippy cover.
Well, and you've been no stranger to how much you love Zenoscope. Zenoscope's known for their top tier art. This, for the subject matter, this is the best art I've ever paid for. Let's not be like, you don't want to insult the other artists. Sure, I get it, but this is the most expensive and the best art, in my opinion, I've ever paid for. It's not that I don't love my other stories and that I'm not proud of them, but this is just the best. It's so good. He's so talented at expressions and doing what I needed him to do. And even for him, this is a very different style for him, which I think is unique and wonderful.
And then even going further into this, because this is another cover, and this is just punk rock to
Right.
the T. And this is New Hampshire 101.
Right, exactly. And that guy, what's really cool is this guy is a guy from Twitter. Like, I've never asked for Twitter for an artist, and this guy does a lot of Buffy fan art, and I just love his punk rock vibe. So he did this wonderful cover, and I think it's great. And it's really got that tattoo across the neck. It's really, really good. Kind of a Sid and Nancy look.
Yeah. And then obviously this is another one, and this hits a whole different niche in a lot of ways, and it gives a little bit of what's going on in the comic, but not too much.
Yeah, well, monsters sell covers, so you got to show the monster a little bit, right? So monsters and chicks sell covers, so you gotta throw the monster on there.
And then this one is kind of cool too, because this is another just straight punk type cover where you got sort of the graffiti, you have him in a certain way, and it's just an awesome visual, because it's also just like the way he's drawn, like
Right.
Zeke is drawn is also sort of I'm going to say something. He looks a little bit homeless. He looks down on his look. He looks very confused in this. And you can feel in this cover pain. That's one of the things that I think is very cool about this cover, is that this cover conveys emotion more so than I feel the other three, where you feel a certain emotion. Maybe you view him down on his luck. Maybe you view him as homeless. Maybe you view him as an addict.
Right.
And so that's something that's very cool as well, where I don't think anybody can just not look at this cover and be like, yep, it's a cover.
Yeah, no, and one of the things we did that was really, really funny is see my hair right now. Clearly, I don't have a mohawk on the regular, right? It looks a mess. We did the same thing with Zeke's hair. Like, I got out of the punk scene, but I didn't quite do my hair. So it's kind of like the faux hawk is what it's called, where like, stuff which I love. I love that look. I love that vibe where he doesn't give a shit about his hair, which if anybody's seen my live things, I don't care either. So we got that in common.
And then this is the one that I think is really cool as well, because this thing was just added on.
Yeah. Who doesn't love Stefano, right? Stefano does amazing art, and no one draws like that, right? He is 100% his own, and I've been wanting a cover from him for a long time, and I decided to do this one. And it's a beautiful piece. I like the naked on it because there's a band in the book called Naked Thoughts, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful cover.
And so what was the story behind this? Because it is super limited. And obviously we all know I'm a variant guy, I'm an exclusive guy. And so what was the story about how this even came about, and you adding it on and you getting it in there? And then it's also 25 if you haven't pledged. I think it's 15 if you already pledged as an add-on.
Right.
And so what was that decision? Because the Kickstarter is doing really well. And was that an impact, or did it just come across?
Well, he was always one of them. So there's a couple people I was trying to get a cover to do the. So to give Stefano credit, I expect a cover to take about 2 weeks when I hire somebody. So at the first week mark, I hired someone to do. I was thinking about hiring somebody, and then Stefano came to mind. I saw his stuff. I really liked it. He charges a little bit more, and I knew I was going to have a little bit of extra money on the Kickstarter, so I could afford it. And my goal actually is to get that metal. I've said this in some of the updates, is I want that cover to be metal, but I got to sell out of our current metal cover. We have a current metal cover right now. And if I sell out of that, we're going to make a virgin one of that metal. But I know Stefano's such a sought after artist. I know people love his work. So I wanted to keep it extremely limited. So I only wanted to have a few covers. So I limited it to 100, made sure it was 100 and make sure it was a cover. So the other thing that Andrew, knows that maybe the fans who are watching this know, I am big on the retail tiers. Andrew's actually even purchased a retail tier because he's a reseller. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I'm sorry if you got to cut it, Andrew. But
No, it's fine. I got no problem in which that Zenoscope knows I resell. They refer to me as a reseller on all their virtual streams, and they have no problem, and I'm pretty open about it. So
yeah. So I have a lot of comic stores. I'm very popular in Florida, obviously, because I live in Florida, and in New Hampshire because that's where I'm from, and then a couple in Texas, stuff like that. None of this, none of I don't have any retail tiers on this. This is the first Kickstarter I've never had retail tiers, and the reason for that is I believe in this story so much. I didn't want the influx of money from the retailers. I wanted to keep the whole run limited, because there is a publishing deal that goes along with this that I can't tell you who it is, what it's from. Look at that shirt. But I kept that out because there is that, and I want to make sure the retailers have their own stuff. And I'm going to try not to. If you see any of these covers in the retail package, they're going to be redone in some way. They won't be the same. I'm not going to just reuse these covers.
And so to even talk about that, I'm not going to push your publishing deal, but it's the idea that that's a big risk, I think, for you. And
it's a huge risk. It was scary. Yeah.
And I don't think people understand. So obviously I haven't produced a comic yet. At some point I'm going to be joining the club, but I got to take care of my Kickstarter that I just funded, which I think is the appropriate thing. And so I'm looking maybe next August, technically. I also need to build up some funds and some other stuff, because I believe that you should have all the money up front, or a good chunk of it at the very least, minus printing costs, because that's what Kickstarter is really for, at least the way I view it.
Yeah, I agree.
But I don't think people understand that, sometimes you rely on a retailer to push you over, and it's much needed. And I think you've relied on it a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with that, because if somebody's ordering $30, it's a big sale. And so, I mean, that I think is something that you should be, acknowledged for and deserve respect for, saying, hey, I believe I'm going to fund without a store's help, without somebody ordering 50 or me ordering a $35 package, or 10 people ordering a $50 package. Right. And so it doesn't sound, $500 doesn't sound like a lot of money. But if you're $500 short, and you're not, obviously you're funded fully now. But it's the idea that that's something that I think people don't understand, who in the Kickstarter, not in the Kickstarter world. So it's a big deal.
And I do it. I'm not trying to sound egotistical here. Those who don't know me, I do it better than most people in the business, like retail tiers. 20% of my funding on every Kickstarter is from retail tiers, just to give you an idea. Like, because I do so well in the retail market, because I don't, not only do I do the resale, I set up a signing or I give them an exclusive cover. I go nuts on my higher level retail tiers. So doing one without a retail tier is was scary to me. I was scary, and to see that I've made more, have more backers, is just great.
I'm actually very curious. I mean, obviously, I think that you're not abandoning retail on
No,
certain
no.
projects. If you go back to Broke Down and For Dead Bodies or anything in that nature, I think obviously you're not abandoning retailers completely, but it's just on certain projects. You're saying, hey, I believe in this so much, or there's something else going on in the background, or you're saying, hey, can I do it without it? Because sometimes you want to see if the idea is even viable without a retailer per se. And so that's something that's interesting. And also, I think it makes these books a lot more valuable in a lot of ways.
It does. So for this particular book, like, I knew exactly the retailer that I wanted to have this book and to publish this book. So I built it to go, hey, I want you to publish it. And when we got to the point where I needed to get the yes, we got the yes, and we're good. Because there is one retailer one publisher that this book fits under. Even, and it's not like Image. Like, you go, whoa, you want the biggest guy? No, there's a team that specializes in New Hampshire, rocks the New Hampshire, New England area. That's the book that I want this for, and I want that, and it's going to help me because I can market to Florida because I'm here all day long. I need a second hub of people who know me. I'm very strategic when I do comics, and I apologize if that offends people because it has offended people. I'm strategic. Like, all right, cool. I can get the Southeast. Here's how I get the Southeast. Okay, now I need a hub up in New Hampshire, and this is how I can get my fans there. And then it just so happens that I wrote a book that's super intimate to me. That was not my intent. It just happened to be that, and so passionate. And it shows. I'm more excited about this book. Everybody who's had me on interviews, several have been like, dude, like, there's something special about this book, because it is. Like, everyone should buy this book. If you back me before and you stop for whatever reason, like, this is the book. Buy it. Seriously, it's so good. I don't want you to miss out. I'm here for you. But yeah, building that together. I'm sorry if I ranted and I didn't even answer your question, but
It's all good. It's all good.
I'm so passionate about this book, and I'm so passionate about retails in general. Like, my goal is to get into retail stores. That's what I want to do. Everything I do is to get into retail stores. But sometimes you need to take a different approach. I'm scared of the retail market. I really am. Like, me having to produce a 4 or 5 issue miniseries that nobody else has seen, right? And hope that somebody backs it, like, and hope that someone supports it. And I'm not going to get paid for another year and a half on that because of solicitations and all that.
I mean, I'm not a fan of retail, in which that, why would I want to be in retail? I want to deal with direct consumer. And COVID has explained to me on a business level that direct consumer is the way to go. It is the absolute way to go for me.
Right.
And whatever I do, and when I produce a comic, I really do not want to deal with a middleman.
Right.
I want to deal directly with my customers, and I also have a different approach. So I completely get being terrified of retail. I completely get it. I'm terrified of Diamond.
Right. I mean, Diamond retail. I'm not scared of stores. Like, stores love me.
I mean, even stores, I'm a little bit scared of, and I'm like, why? I would rather just sell my eBay store, and it's working. And I guess I have a different approach, but I'm terrified of Diamond because you know it, and I know it, that every time you go through Diamond, they have to take a piece out of it. And so whenever you keep on going to another person, and there's a middleman, and then there's another middleman, your royalty essentially, or your cut gets smaller.
Sure.
And that's a problem, because that means that maybe if you were selling directly, you needed to sell 5,000 books to make X amount of money. Now you need to sell 15,000. And there's a big difference, because there's a whole bunch of skills you need for 5,000 versus 15,000 books you're selling, and so on and so forth. And then there's a whole different skill for selling 100,000 books as well. And then it's Diamond scares me, and so do stores.
Right.
And I like my eBay store because I like having control, and I think it's a big deal. for me, and that's just who I am as a person, is that I want complete control.
Yeah, for me, like, you can fake numbers. You and I both know of people who buy their exclusive covers to boost the numbers of those rarity covers. So, and it's a good play, man. If you have $1,000, you can buy all of your $50. So, like, the next tier goes up and boost it up. I know a bunch of creators should do that. No shame in the game. I love the hustle, but that's why I really want to get into the retail market, because all these retailers saying, "Hey, we can't keep you in stock," means something to me. Because my goal is to get bigger and bigger and do bigger and bigger things. But Brent, I do not understand that question. Could you ask that again? Maybe you understand it. Andrew can explain it to me.
Whoa. Why being intentional be an issue for intention in comics?
Yeah, I don't.
I don't know. I don't get that question either.
Yeah, I don't get it, Brent. Brent, ask it in a different way.
Yeah, I don't know what Brent's referring to. In a lot of ways, I don't know what he's referring to. That's an
But
issue. So
but you're absolutely, to go back to your point. You're absolutely right. Like, why have another person out there if I can sell what I feel comfortable with, and that's what I'm going for. That's a great goal. Like, that's what I love about Kickstarter, knowing, I know that any Kickstarter that I do will get me about 200 or so fans, like, minimum, because I've gathered about 200 fans, which is so cool, right? And it's really closer to 250, when I look, because I know this store has 10, this store has 5, these cons have 5 that come to me every time consistently. But it's really, really cool when you do that math, right? That 1,000 fans can make you this a living. All right, I'm very close to that. And some of my Kickstarters do even more than that. But watching those numbers grow, watching people love my books, watching people, tag me and post because they're talking about my book, it means the world to me. And it's so humbling.
yeah, no, I know the feeling, and it's more interesting for me because I had a bunch of people who I've already interviewed on my show, back my Kickstarter, and then I think I converted 8 or 9 new people who've never been on my show, who I don't know, and I had one of them, and I just started interviewing one of them who I never met before, and it's very, very interesting when you get a new fan as well, and you start cultivating, you start actually seeing where your audience is, and it's a very cool thing. And now I'm figuring out how to grow my tribe in a lot
Right.
of ways, and I have multiple tribes that I'm growing, which is even cooler. And then figuring out how to merge those tribes is going to be coming up in the next year, and so it's
And that's
very, very
fun.
cool.
I love that. I love it because I have my broke down audience who would never buy voodoo. They're like, "That's religious." No, I get it, but like, and then I have the Cthulhu Invades Oz. Is there like, they don't give a crap about me at all. They like Cthulhu and they like Oz, and I gotta accept that. Travis, you mentioned earlier being intentional with what you wanted to do with your comics has been an issue in the past. Trying to get into certain markets for why is that? Oh, um, people like to, when you say stuff like that, there is a certain audience, and it's probably about 10%. And I've seen Andrew talk about it in times past too, of people who like feel that if you bring the business aspects of it, you don't care about the art, which is, it can't be further from the truth. But certain people, and I think it's those certain people who can't get it, right? They do the art and nobody's buying their art, and they think that that's all there is to it. No, there's a whole marketing and specialist.
There's a concept where, and I could allude to this, where so if you have a Paul Green cover on your Kickstarter,
Sure.
people love Paul Green because they love his art, and that is a business decision. If you book Paul Green for your comic, or you book, Sun Kumanaki for a cover, people are fans of Sun Kumanaki. That is a business decision. But the reason why people are coming, I feel, and maybe this is sort of getting to the point, I think, is that people are coming for the art as well because they love that artist, but you made a business decision. So when you're starting to become strategic and intentional, if I produce a comic, one of the things that I'm going to do, and I'm sure that you've thought about this as well, and obviously I just showed a bunch of covers, is that those covers bring people in to some degree, or they might have already been coming in, but they keep them, or they make that decision easier to back without hesitation. And that's kind of another strategic position. But I think when you're talking about getting into New Hampshire, that's different than covers per se. You know,
Yeah, but I've had those cover conversations. I have a friend of mine who's like, I hired such and such, former Marvel, blah, 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 blah. I was like, that's great. If he doesn't share it, doesn't mean anything. Like, I will take a Kickstarter guy, an indie artist who's only done a couple of books, like a Zenoscope or a couple of image, stories or a good boy. But if he's going to share it all the time, I'll take that guy any day of the week. If it,
Yeah, but if J. Scott Campbell said, Travis, I'll do your book for free, but I can't share it. It's a done deal.
we'd invest in some marketing to J. Scott Campbell. It'd all be Facebook ads in your face, J. Scott Campbell on the regular. But you get what I'm saying. And even going to Paul Green. Paul Green's great, but if I had him on this cover, he'd have to draw the chick, which is not my main focus, because that's what he's good at. You've got to also know what they're good at too, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just knowing what their style is, and if that style complements your book. But I've seen people who I love. They do amazing art. People buy books for their art, but because they don't share it, nobody buying the cover from them is useless.
There's a bunch of stories that I cannot talk about that are problematic in comics,
Right.
and if those are private conversations and I am not at liberty to discuss, it is not my project,
Right.
and so it is not my place, but it has been alluded to in certain episodes of my show with certain guests, and artists didn't want to share it, and it definitely hurt the Indiegogo that it was on.
Yeah.
It definitely hurt it. It probably took 20 to 30% off of what that Indiegogo should have done,
Sure.
which is a lot, considering that artist was getting paid a lot of money. So obviously there's a lot of stuff going on. And then I do want to show two more things. So obviously
Sure.
that's the medal right there.
That's the medal. Yep.
50 of them are up from my understanding. And so
Correct. 50, and they're almost out. I think we got like 2 more left.
And then there's these that are also really cool, which is just the punkified remarks. And so that's black and white with of the cover A, and then I don't know exactly how.
I'm gonna punkify it. I'm gonna do with markers, and I'm gonna draw stuff on it to punkify it up. So it's gonna be hand punkified by me. Maybe the artist, because I'm thinking about getting him down for a signing, but we got to figure out what that looks like. But yeah.
And so that's something that's very much out there with all that stuff. And obviously, I mean, you're killing it right now with this stuff.
Thank you.
And so there's a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, the medal, and once that medal hits, and you still 2 more, right? I think you're going to be doing
the Stefano. Yeah, we'll take that. The Virgin Stefano will replace it. So I'll get rid of that tier. I'll close that tier, and then we'll have the Virgin Stefano there.
And so that's something that is very much being thrown out there. And I'm assuming people could just drop it in as an add-on, right?
Yeah, there's an add-on version as well, but the add-on version is very sold out too. So I may have to move 1 or 2 to get that tier back, but we're very close. Within 5 or so. I think it's 2 right now, but if I look in the add-on, maybe a little bit more. But we're very, very close to shutting that down.
And then obviously I'm just checking what else is going on. Obviously, no more questions for everybody, but obviously I know you got a hard deadline.
I do. I normally stay for a long time. In fact, Andrew normally and I talk for an hour after, but I have a show tonight. I started doing a show called Create a Hangout. Andrew has hung out before. In fact, I'm actually thinking about in a few weeks doing a Gist podcasters hangout, like hang out with all the people who've had me on their shows, have them on there. I got to figure out what that looks like. I only do them when I have a Kickstarter going, but I do so many Kickstarters. It's most of the year. And tonight I have a bunch of people from Scout, SourcePoint, Image, DC, Marvel. Like it's crazy. And Pat Chan.
Oh, so you took Pat Chan from me.
Yeah, because I had him on my show tons of times.
No, he's great. It was a blast. 2 hours. 2 hours.
Wow, 2 hours. Wow.
It was a lot. It was intense. It was a good interview though. There's a lot of good stuff in there. But I do want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself, because obviously you got a lot of stuff going on. Obviously this Kickstarter is going on. So where can people find the Kickstarter? Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, to be honest, normally I share all my socials, but I don't want you to. I want you to go to granitestatepunk.com. I want you to check out this book. If you really care about me, you'll find me. I don't care. You need to see this book. See if it's something that interests you. Read the pages that are there. It's literally something special. It's a very special, intimate book, and I want to share it with you before it goes to somebody else who may change it up, who may do whatever they do, because it's publishers, they can do whatever they want. Read it from my company. Get it while it's hot. You got 7 more days, your last week.
And so obviously I've been saying this and I'm going to keep saying it. You have to support indie. So what that means, and I guess I have to change it, my indie statement slightly, is that you have to support Kickstarters because these books don't get made without Kickstarter. Right. And every dollar that is pledged goes into the book, goes into making the book, goes into stretch goals, goes into printing the book, and make sure that that book gets delivered. I'm back, right? So you need to share out that this book exists. You need to share out that you back the book. You need to go tell people that, because unfortunately social media is not what it used to be in that realm. So obviously you need to go do that, and it is super important whether you back it or you don't back it, because people sometimes have money issues. It happens, but you can share it out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. That stuff's free. So go share out that book. It goes a long way, and it means something this time. And I'm sure Travis will appreciate any share he gets, any pledge he gets. No pledge is too small. As far as I'm concerned, briefly, I'm just going to go right through it. Obviously, you could support me, use Mixum. If you need to print a book, use my code, Andrew Davis, 5% off. It helps to fund the show. And then also, you could go and buy my shirt on Redbubble. It's really cool. Use my BCW code, Pop Anime Comics, 10% off. Bags and boards are expensive, guys. Long boxes are expensive. 10% off goes a long way, and every dollar helps when you're trying to make it. So if you don't have bags, boards, long boxes, go over to BCW Supplies, Pop Anime Comics. It's in the description up above. And I'm going to give you the final word before you got to pull Bill Maher and run to your show.
Go to GraniteStatePunk.com. Live free or die. Mother effers. I won't even swear. Mother effers. Back it, share it, love it. Support Andrew. And even if you forgot to put the code in like I did, you can ask them and they'll refund you your money. They're really, really good about it. So make sure you do that.
Well, on that note, that's a wrap, everybody.